Hi, Taseli. Can you hear me?
Hello?
Hi, Taseli. Sorry, I had you on mute. I can hear you.
Oh, there we go.
Hi, Taseli. I can hear you now.
Great.
Okay.
Oops.
Hi.
1 second.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, I'm all set now.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Tim Hume at the PPOC. Thanks for joining us for our MIIS training webinar this afternoon. We have Taseli Mohammed and Devin Smith-Clark with us from MIIS. I just wanted to go over a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. First, just to let you know, all of your phones are muted by default, so that we can keep down any background noise. But there are a couple of ways that you can get in touch with us as we go through the seminar. The first is that you can raise your hand, and I'll show you how to do that in a second. And I'll unmute you if you want to ask a question. Or you can use the chat window to send the group or just me as the host a question privately. So to get to those options, you should see a little green bar in your web browser that says you're viewing the PPOC WebEx. And if you click that, you'll have the participants option. So if you click that, you'll see this option right here to raise your hand. And then you can also click the chat button, and you can send your question to me or to all the participants. So with that, what I'd like to do is turn it over to Taseli so that we can get started. So
Okay, great.
Okay. So let me just bring you up here.
Okay. So while Tim is doing that, I'll just introduce myself. As Tim mentioned, my name is Taseli Mohammed. I am the current MIIS Assistant Manager, and I'll be assisting in the rollout of the PPOC practices, rollout of the MIIS across the PPOC practices, specifically with those using ECW. So what I'm going to do is just give a brief presentation on, let's see, I'm sharing my desktop with you, on the MIIS, and then we'll have enough time to pause for questions in between, and then obviously at the end as well. And then Tim will keep me sort of on track with time, as well as if there are any questions sort of looming out there. So what I'm going to be covering in this presentation is the benefits of the MIIS, what's the whole point of it, and then I'll get into how do you actually start reporting data to the MIIS. I'll talk about where we are right now with technical readiness, and then some pieces around what we refer to as clinical integration, which is related to the legislation that was passed establishing the MIIS in the first place. Then I'll say where we currently are with the PPOC at large, and then a little bit around your individual sites. And then we'll talk about our next steps and a timeline with those next steps, a tentative timeline. So what exactly is the MIIS? The MIIS is a secure, confidential, web-based system. It is capable of receiving immunization data through directly entering it into the web interface, or through an EHR connecting and sending us data electronically from your EHR to the MIIS. It is a lifespan registry, which means that it can contain immunization data for newborn babies all the way through adulthood. This setup helps identify pockets of unimmunized and underimmunized children and adults. It also can assist, it has tools available to assist providers with clinical decision making, and I'll touch a little bit on that in a couple slides. And the overall system provides an infrastructure for tracking essential information for if there are any sort of natural disaster or other infectious disease emergency. And for some of you that order state-supplied vaccine, you may be familiar with the vaccine management module of the MIIS, which has been updated to track approximately 3.2 million doses of vaccine that MDPH distributes annually. So this is just a visual of what the MIIS can look like for a single patient. The end result after the MIIS has been rolled out across the states is that for any given new patient, new baby that's born, we are getting a feed from Vital Records. This is happening as of January 1, 2012, we started receiving this feed. And then as that baby ages, the shots that they receive at their pediatric practices, as well as their schools, local pharmacy, and current providers, all of these various, let me just see, I think we might be getting a question. I just heard a ding. Is everything all set, Tim, or do I have to make any changes?
No, we're good.
Okay, sorry about that.
That's okay.
So for any given single patient, this is what the MIIS could look for them. They will have one record in the MIIS with all of the data consolidated from the various institutions that they received immunization, so that there can be one single record for them of their consolidated immunization history. And so what this allows is that within the immunization registry module of the MIIS, what at any given site you're able to do once you're onboarded is you're able to look up a new patient that's at your practice and look up what we refer to as the immunization forecast. This means it's a tool that helps you identify any immunizations that the patient may be due or overdue for. It's a very simple tool that we have available. You're also able to manage a patient's data sharing status, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about what that actually means more to the middle of my presentation. You're also able to run various types of reports, including reminder recall reports, where you can directly print out reminders via letters or postcards directly from the MIIS. And then you're also able to monitor your data quality to ensure that the data that you're entering in your EHR is accurately being reflected in the MIIS. And for those of you that use the vaccine management module, you may already be familiar with these aspects, but what you're able to do is complete your annual enrollment. You're able to place vaccine orders and upload the temperature logs that goes with those vaccine orders. You're able to track and manage your inventory. You're able to transfer vaccines from one facility to the other facility if necessary, and you're able to run these various reports. And so what I want to show now is just a little, again, a visual of what this actually looks like in the system. You have the MIIS, and it's broken up into two modules, the immunization registry module and the vaccine management module. Within both modules, you have practice reports, practice and patient level reports that you're able to run. And then you're able to do this functionality within the immunization registry and these key functionality within the vaccine management. And what I wanted to highlight right here is that these two modules operate very independently, except that we have this new piece where any immunization that is reported, if all the pieces of it is correctly in there and it matches up, that inventory is able to be decremented from your vaccine management module. So we've integrated the immunization registry module and the vaccine management module to allow sites to automatically decrement their inventory as their immunizations are reported. And so for those of you that complete vaccine orders, you know that there's that step where you need to report your aggregate usage. Once your immunization starts to be reported to the system, that step may be reduced or you will no longer have to do it if all immunizations are reported through the immunization registry module. So that's a newish feature that you'll be able to see once you're onboarded. So now I'm going to switch a little bit to talk about the whole legal framework for the MIIS. Legislation was passed in June 2010, and regulations were promulgated earlier this year in January of 2015. And then along with this came the MIIS compliance schedule. And so I'm going to talk a little bit more about each of these pieces. That DPH was charged with establishing the registry in 2010. And then in 2015, we had our regulations approved, which sort of fleshed out the legislation and mandated, detailed out all the various mandates of the legislation itself. And then the compliance schedule that was released gave a timeline to say by which time different groups of sites needed to start reporting data to the MIIS. And so your sites, I believe, fall into the by December 1 timeline, which is any site that reports immunizations through their EHR system over 1,000 doses a year. If you administer over 1,000 doses a year, you need to do that by that period of time. So the piece now I want to focus on is within the regulations and the legislation, they stipulated that it is mandatory for any healthcare provider that administers immunizations in the state of Massachusetts that those immunizations need to be reported to the MIIS. For a site to be able to do that, they need to register, they need to comply with the details of reporting, and they need to include in it the confidentiality and security measures. And so we work with sites to make sure that all of these steps are taken place. And then the one other piece that provider sites are responsible for that we help guide you on is this aspect of the duty to inform. So I'm just going to talk a little bit more about that right now. This text here is taken directly from the legislation itself, and what it's really saying is that every site, once they've onboarded with the MIIS, they are responsible for informing their patients that their data is being reported to the MIIS. And then in turn, the patients have a right to what we call limit their data sharing in the MIIS. So they're able to object to sharing their data across providers. So what I really want to clarify here is that they cannot say they don't want their data reported at all. That's not possible because it's been mandated that as a healthcare facility that administers immunizations, you need to report all of those immunizations to the MIIS. But what the patient can do is say that I only want the shots that you give to me. I only want you to see those shots. I don't want any other provider practice to see that shot. So they are able to do that, and we've sort of built in a protocol and a systematic way in the MIIS to handle this. And so I'm going to talk to you about that a little bit now. So the piece for informing patients about the MIIS, we've pulled together some tools that can help with this. Our main one is the MIIS fact sheet. We also have some others available, some posters, sample language that can be incorporated into your website or newsletters, and we have translated versions of these materials available. In terms of if a patient has chosen to object to sharing their data across provider sites, we have created an objection or withdrawal of objection form. And the reason that it's this way is because a patient can choose to object or withdraw that objection at any point in time, any number of times. There's no limitation on that. So how it works is that the patient would request to object to sharing their data, and when that happens, the patient would be given a form to complete. Once the patient completes that form, the provider site will, a user at the provider site will log into the MIIS and change data sharing status. Once the data sharing status has been updated and saved, the provider would then also keep this copy for themselves in their records and fax a copy to the MIIS. And we also have translated versions of this form available. So what I'm going to show you now is what data sharing actually is in the MIIS. So in the MIIS, you may have, so I'm going to walk you through a scenario. You may have a patient that receives their first Hep B shot at a hospital, and let's say their name is Janie, and that will be reported to the MIIS. And at that point, the data sharing status in the MIIS is set to yes, because we have said that in that parent packet, that patient record, that parent of the patient is informed about the MIIS. And so that will be in the MIIS, that existing record in there. Then let's say next the patient goes to their first pediatric visit and they receive this combo vaccine. That would also be reported to the MIIS and be placed in their actual record in the MIIS. It'll be matched up in there. And let's say they receive another shot at school or something like that. That'll also be reported to the MIIS. So as you can see, there's one patient record with a data sharing set to yes in the MIIS where all those immunizations are collected. And so all of these sites are able to look up in the MIIS, search for the patient. Sorry, I'll just clean this up a little bit. I took this from another presentation. And you're able to review their forecast and run various reports for this patient. So you can see all three of these sites have access to the MIIS. Now let's say coming into at some point, a parent has chosen to object to sharing their data. So they go to their pediatric practice and they say, they've been informed about the MIIS and they say, I actually want to object. I don't want to share my data with all sites in the MIIS. So at that point, they would complete the form. The form would be processed by your site. You would then log into the MIIS, and you would change their data sharing status to no. And so at the end of this presentation, I'm actually going to log into the test environment of our MIIS and show you what that looks like in the MIIS itself. And so if they change the data sharing status to no, what that means is that this is how it's going to look in the MIIS instead. You're going to have all three of these sites, they're going to split the record into three of them, and they'll each have their own record with the data sharing set to no, and the shot that they administered would only be viewable by the site that administered it. And then all other sites in the MIIS, they would not be able to see these records because they have not administered any shot to this patient, so there would be no record associated to them. So that's essentially what it looks like when a patient is sharing their data and when a patient is not sharing their data in the MIIS. And then specifically for the PPOC, they have submitted a workflow that's going to be adopted by all of your sites. So I'm just going to walk you through what it looks like in terms of this workflow that I just described to you. The first piece is informing the patient about the MIIS, and the second piece is if a patient so chooses, or a parent or guardian chooses to object to sharing their data, they will fill out one of those objection forms, and their data sharing status will be updated in the MIIS. And so this workflow will be implemented upon your site going live officially with the MIIS. And so I'm going to walk you through what this protocol is. And again, this will be shared with all of your practices along with this presentation as well. So the first step is the patient is due for an immunization. And so you want to have on hand available the posters or the fact sheets visible for those parents or patients. And then once they're getting the shot, you want to actually distribute the fact sheet to them. And then just have on hand, once they've read through the fact sheet, if they choose to object to sharing their data, they can be given one. But you don't want to give them the objection form right away. You only want to give it if it's requested. And so at this point, the patient can not do anything. They just receive their immunization, and you go about your regular routine of adding that shot to your record in your EHR, and then that data will be transmitted over to the MIIS. So if they don't make any change, then meaning they don't choose to limit their data sharing, that is the end of the workflow. The workflow is complete. But if they say, I want to limit who gets to see my data, so I want to object to sharing my data, you want to continue with the workflow. And the workflow is just stating that you would go ahead and administer the immunization as usual and enter the data into the EHR as usual. And then you would also have them complete the MIIS objection or withdrawal of objection form. Once they have that completed, you would log into the MIIS, or you would have your site's access administrator or trained user log into the MIIS, update the patient's data sharing status in accordance to what they wanted, and then fax us a copy of this objection form and file a copy with the patient's chart. that's a very high-level general workflow for the PPOC. And if you have any specific things at your provider practice that you wanted to detail out for your staff, you can always do so. But this is the overall plan that the PPOC sites will be implementing. So I'm going to pause right here just to see if there are any questions around data sharing or informing the patients about the MIIS. Are there any questions?
I don't see any so far, Tasali.
Okay, great. I'll just move on then. So this is just giving you a status update around where we are right now with our PPOC sites. We have a pilot practice, and they are currently reporting data to the live MIS application. We just have to do one round of something called our data quality checks. And once that's complete, we'll feel really confident that the data is accurately in there, and then that site will be able to go live and implement that workflow that I just described to you. So that's sort of where we are right now with our pilot sites. The next step is to get all of your sites, all of the rest of the PPOC, onboarded with the MIIS. And so what that involves is from the EHR integration side, there's a hub connection to eClinicalWorks. There's some mappings that needs to be involved, that HL7 message formatting, and all of that is done so that end-to-end testing can be completed to ensure that the data that's entered in your EHR is accurately coming over to the MIIS. And then the second side of things is called clinical integration. You want to make sure that the site is registered and you have users associated to it. And I know for all of the PPOC sites, for the most part, most of the sites are registered already. And so if there's any outstanding questions around registration and gaining access to the application, that's something I can talk to you a little bit more as end-to-end testing wraps up. You would also want to share your workflow and make the necessary preparations based on the PPOC workflow. Make sure you have those materials in your office and your staff is aware of how the workflow will go once you are ready to go live with the MIIS. You just want to have some preparation happening in anticipation of going live with the MIIS. We do have various trainings available. We have some training videos, we have some guides, we have our user manual, and we have the opportunity, if necessary, we can also do a demonstration within our training environment, which I'm going to touch on a little bit at the end of this call. And then our last thing during our clinical integration phase is once end-to-end testing is complete, we work with sites to have someone at your actual practice do something called a data quality check or DQ check. And what this really means is that we select a couple of patients at your practice, and we have you look up their record in your EHR, and then compare that record to the MIIS and see if, one, to make sure you actually find the patient in the MIIS, and once you find them, make sure that the details around the shots that they've received are actually accurately reflected in the MIIS. So for example, in the past we found things like it's in your EHR it says the shot was administered on your right arm, but in the MIIS it says the left leg. That says that there's a mapping issue that we need to correct that. Sometimes it says that it's an unspecified vaccine when in your EHR it's correctly saying which vaccine it really is. And so those types of things that we want to make sure we catch before we start getting real data into our real environment. So once we conduct these checks, we go back to IT if there's any issues to be resolved. Once IT has confirmed that those issues have been resolved, we then move your site into our production monitor phase. And what we do in this phase is just one final round of data quality checks from your live EHR system to the live MIIS. And once that's confirmed that everything looks accurate, your site would select a go-live date, and then on that date, implement the workflow that I just talked you through. So that's the general high-level overview of the rollout process of the MIIS. Resources for anything related to the MIIS is available on our Contact MIIS Resource Center. This is the website for it up here. On this website, this is where you're able to register your site and register new users for your site. And you're also able to manage those users, be able to add more users or deactivate a user that's no longer at your practice. This is also where you're able to get all the tools around informing patients about the MIIS. We have the fact sheets available, the posters, the sample language. Right now, we do have a supply of the fact sheets that you can order from our clearinghouse. It's in limited supply, so I recommend getting those orders in early if you're going to plan on ordering them. We also have it available in various languages, so you can do that as well if you have certain populations coming to your practice. And then we also have information on the patient's right to limit data sharing, which is the patient's decision to, if they want to object or withdraw a previous objection. The form is available on this website, and we have it available in multiple languages as well. This is also the website where we have all our training resources. We have our videos and our guides and our user manual. And we also have, for those that are interested, we have our IT documentation and other resources around IT available on this website as well. So I'm going to talk about next steps right now and our tentative timeline. Once our pilot goes live, which I'm anticipating will be in the next couple weeks, we're also right now at the same time conducting end-to-end testing with all of your sites, all of the PPOC sites interested in Meaningful Use Stage 2. Those are the ones that have been selected. Go. And we're right now testing with you guys. And I'm anticipating this is going to be done in the next 2 to 3 weeks. I'm hoping for the earlier side of that. So if we guess around, anticipate around October 1, that could be complete. And then the data quality checks in our certification environment that I discussed earlier, if we could maybe get those done by October 9th. And then we have a week to resolve any issues that may have come up, and that will be by October 16th. And then we'll be able to then confirm that we're ready to move your site into the production monitor phase. So that means the data is sent from your EHR to the live environment. And we would do that for about a week, so that would be October 23rd. We'll have that data coming through, and you'd be able to make that setup happen. And then we'll be able to conduct your data quality checks over the following week, which is the ending of the week of October 30th. And then we're able to, once everything looks good and we don't have to make any changes and there aren't any issues that come up, we'd be on time to go live with the MIIS by that first Monday in November, November 2nd, 2015. So this is a tentative timeline. If we stick to these time estimates right now, we'd be able to make that for your site. And that will also be the complete step, the last step you need for meeting Meaningful Use Stage 2 as well. This is just some information, some resources for you. Again, the website, Devin Smith-Clark, who is on this call right now, he's going to be taking over the rollout of the MIIS to the PPOC site. So this is his contact information. And then this is the contact information of the help desk. So that's it in terms of the presentation. Are there any questions that came up for this?
I don't see any yet. And again, folks, if you if you have any questions, you can either through the participants window just raise your hand and I'll unmute your line, or if you want to put a question into the chat window, you can send it to me that way as well, and I'll read it to everyone so that we can get it answered.
Well, if there aren't any questions, I'm going to move on to doing a short demonstration.
Okay.
So this is our MIIS training environment. I'm just going to log in. This is not how you would regularly log into the MIIS, would be through the virtual gateway. So it would look more like this website, and you would log in. and see the login page. You put in your username and password. And once you log in, you'll see, I'll just show you what that looks like. You would log in and you'd see this option to click on the Massachusetts Immunization Information System. And that'll bring you into the actual live MIS application. If you're associated to more than one site, you would see a drop-down. So this is what the live MIS looks like. But I'm going to do a demonstration for you now. So I'm going to log into our training environment. And the training environment is sort of a mirror image of the MIIS. It sort of looks the same. It has a lot of the same information, but it's all test data, so it's no real patient data is in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm really going to demonstrate for you the biggest piece around managing a patient's data sharing status, because that's what you'll have to do. And again, this only will likely only concern less than 1% of your patients or their parents or guardians. So we don't anticipate this being a large burden for sites. It's hopefully not going to have a lot of patients actually objecting to sharing their data. So this is the home page. You would say click on Immunization Registry, which brings up a search screen for you. You're able to search by their birth date or an actual birth date range if you don't have their exact birth date, their last name, and I'm just going to put in a random last name to see if we get any data here. Once you put in at least one of these fields, you're able to hit search, and you can see anybody that falls into that search criteria comes up. Each page holds 10 patients, and so you can see a number of pages over here. If your results was more than 100 patients, it'll ask you to narrow down your results. So I'm just going to click on one of these test patients. And this is what will pop up if somebody has a no data sharing status. You wouldn't be able to get into their record because their data sharing status is set to no. But for the most part, most data sharing are going to be set to yes. So I'm going to click into this one. To get into the patient record, you would click on their first name or their last name. The top of the record would have the details of this patient. This will have their demographic information, their address information, caregivers, information about your provider site, birth information, and immunization information. So in this case, there's no immunizations associated to this patient right now. And then I actually want to pull up a record that will show you that so that you have a better idea of what that looks like. Hopefully this one has some data. There we go. So this is what shots associated with a patient record would look like. So shots, when it comes over to the MIIS, this is how it will be displayed. And to see more details, you can actually click on one of the hyperlinks of the date of the shot, and it'll put up all the details around the shot that have been reported from your site. So this is what, during the data quality checks, you would log into your EHR, you would see the details of the shots associated to this patient. Then you would come into the MIIS, you would search for the patient. Once you find the patient, you would be able to click on their immunization tab and then look up the shots that they've received. Click into any one of the shots and see the details around the shot and ensure that the details match up to the details that you have. So that's what it looks like, the summary of the patient's immunization. In terms of data sharing, if somebody actually wants to change their data sharing status, you would come to the data sharing tab. And this is where you'd be able to change their data sharing status. So you would say no. And if you said no, they don't want to share their data, meaning they have objected to sharing their data, this will pop up saying that ensuring that you have an objection or withdrawal of objection form completed before you actually save this change. So I'm just going to click OK to this. And then from this, you would actually click Save here. And what that does is it updates the data sharing status to be no. And then if I was to go back to look at the immunizations, you can see all of those immunizations are now gone because the shots that were administered to this patient were reported by a different provider site, so that it wasn't this provider site that reported those shots. If you had reported those shots, they would stay on those immunization records, just like I had showed you in the PowerPoint. And then you're always also, the patient is always able to change the data sharing back to yes. So if they come back in the future and they say, I actually want to share my data, they want to withdraw their previous objection, you would log in, they would have them complete a withdrawal of objection form. This pop-up is actually confirming that you have them complete a withdrawal of objection form, and you would click OK, and then you'd click yes, and then you would save that. So that would save the patient information and have their data sharing status set to yes. Are there any questions about this?
I don't see any right now, but let me just, do you have anything else to show, Taseli?
No, I believe this is...
Okay, so I just want to go back to, if I can take control and be the presenter, I just want to show people how they can get in touch with us again, because I think that some may not have seen the directions at the beginning.
Sure.
So, okay. So I am going to just go over that real quick. Oops. Sorry. Okay, so at the top of your browser, you should have a green bar saying you're viewing the PPOC WebEx. So to raise your hand, and if I see that, I can unmute you. If you just click the participants button and then raise your hand, I'll see you that way. The other way is if you open the chat button, or the chat window, I should say, you can type your question down here and hit send, and I'll see it that way as well. Okay. Let me just do another check of both windows before we sign off. This group is a lot more quiet than yesterday.
Yeah. That's okay, as long as everybody understands. They can always, as we move forward with the process, always be in touch with Devin or be in touch with the MIS help desk to provide more information. This is just a first round of sharing information with the PPOC site so they have a good understanding of what the MIS is and the important pieces for going live with the MIS.
We do have, we have one question that came up. Who else besides the PCP is able to see a patient's immunizations if the patient agreed to sharing data?
So the patient record can be seen in the MIS by anybody that has access to the system, so on behalf of your site. So when each of your sites had registered, you identified somebody that was gaining access to the MIS application. For the most part, the vaccine managers were the ones that registered sites because we did a huge push back a few years ago to get the vaccine managers onboarded with the MIIS so that they are able to access the vaccine management module. So if your site knows that you have some staff that would like to gain access to the MIS application, you would have to just ensure that your site is registered, so you can always give Devin a call, or you talk to your vaccine manager, see who has access to the MIIS, and then the next step is for what we refer to as the access administrator, which is the first person that registered the site. They're able to identify you as a new user. Once they identify you as a new user, you get an automated email with instructions on how you register. Once you register, you would submit a form to us from based on what you're entered during a registration process. That form is processed, and you do get an email with your username and password from the virtual gateway. So the registration process can take a little bit of time, depending on how quickly you get all those steps done and how quickly we process it. And so if you are interested in gaining access to the MIS application, I suggest you work on that sooner so that by the time your site goes live, you're able to access the system and be able to use it to your benefit.
We had someone else ask if they could get a copy of the presentation, so that is part of the plan. I can send, what the plan is that Sally is going to send it to me, and I've been keeping track of everyone who's attended this webinar, so I'll send it out as one of the follow-up items.
Great, yep. So I popped in the piece around the data sharing, and then I think you're also recording it as well, so we'll have the recording available, the PowerPoint available, as well as I can link you to our training videos and our quick reference guides to share a little bit more information around the functionality available in the MIS itself.
We have another a follow-up question regarding the the first access question, where someone is asking, so no other providers or school nurses can view the records. Is that correct?
No, so we do have, so any provider practice that's reporting data to the MIIS can see the records that they report, as well as any other record that is their data sharing is set to yes. As well as those healthcare providers, we also make the MIIS available to specific other groups that was stipulated by the legislation. This includes schools, local boards of health, WIC, and then any other agency involved around the education and outreach around immunizations. And so for those sites, they may not be actually administering immunizations, but they are able to view the MIIS and be able to access patient records for their record as well, for their benefit. And those sites would have to go through a similar process of registering to gain access, to gain a login and username and password from the virtual gateway to gain access to the MIIS. Any other questions?
I'm just looking right now. I don't see any other ones. Actually, okay. One other one just came up. As far as on the website, will there be an access log where users could see who's viewed the patient's data?
So we actually, in our next release, which will be slated for the spring of next year, we're going to have something called an audit trail. And in this audit trail, you'll be able to see who may have edited the record. You won't necessarily be able to see every single person that has viewed the record, but you will be able to see if anybody has accessed the record and edited it in any way, or added to it in any way. You'll be able to see that piece of information.
Okay. Just doing another scan here for any questions.
Sure.
I don't see any right now, but again, the slide deck will have Devin's contact information as well as that for the MIIS help desk where we can ask any questions as well.
Exactly. Yep. Yep, and we'll be in touch, giving you an update to make sure, like, if we're sticking to that timeline or if we're going over or under, anything like that. We'll keep the PPOC leadership, which will hopefully keep you all informed about the status of your onboarding with the MIIS as you move through the process.
Right. So that would be me sending out some additional updates, similar to what I did a few weeks ago regarding this webinar.
Great, great.
Okay, well, sorry,
and Tim, you're in touch with Patrick Zumo. That's our main contact as well. So
right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Great. So we'll include you in our future updates as well.
Okay. Well, thanks everyone for your time. We appreciate it, and thanks, Sally, for the presentation again. And if you have any questions, feel free to get in touch with me or Devin or the MIIS help desk, and we'll go from there.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.